sitting here in a beautiful place in the middle of the Netherlands with Adyashanti. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk to you.
Sure, Patrick. It's nice to be with you.
Yeah. I just went into this place. I've never been to a silent retreat before. And I immediately started feeling loneliness. What is that? I know it's my loneliness.
Yeah. Yeah.
I try to make eye contact with people. People look away. I felt so small.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really common, especially if you're kind of not used to a silent environment. It's really common that people do. You feel lonely. It's the first thing people will say. I feel lonely, because we get that reflection, right, of ourselves socially through interaction.
Yeah.
And when it's silent, we're not getting that. And so initially it feels odd or lonely or a little strange. You know, if you were to stay here for 24 or 48 hours, that tends to start to, that part of us that sort of sees itself through the reflection of social interaction, it kind of starts to just settle down. And the loneliness generally settles down with it. But I think that's the most common thing that I hear when people say come into a silent retreat environment where they haven't done much of that.
Yeah.
Those first couple days, sometimes it lasts longer even, they'll feel that loneliness.
And I immediately hear the voices in my head telling, oh, those people are zombies and they don't look at you and they don't even hold the door open for you. Those people are egoistic.
Yeah.
That's what my mind tells me
Sure.
in an instant.
Sure.
So how to deal with that? Just ignore it, or is there some kind of truth in it? Or
well, who knows, right? If there's truth in it or not, right? I mean, you can't know, of course, unless you were in a given environment for a while. It could be the case, right? It could be the case a retreat's full of a bunch of egotists and nobody is really interested in you. It's possible, but generally, you know, it's our mind kind of filling in the gaps, right? Because again, when it's silent, we're not getting all these cues of how we're doing. Are we fitting in? Do people like us? Do they notice us? And it's one of the, I mean, once you kind of like sink into it, it's one of the beauties of a silent retreat is that part of us that's finding itself through that kind of relation kind of settles down. But initially, its back rises up, you know, and generally the conclusions it comes to aren't the most pleasant.
No. And then I started hating myself again of thinking that thoughts, you don't even know those people, and you're labeling them egoistic and spiritual zombie or whatever. You know, all the phrases that come up.
Yeah.
Could it maybe be that one of the purposes of these kind of retreats is that I get aware of all those?
Sure. That is one of the main purposes, is you're confronted with whatever your mental and emotional condition is, right? Because when we have a lot of interaction, of course the interaction's great, right? If you come here, say on the last day, and people go to lunch on the last day, it'll be loud, and it'll be energetic, and people will be talking, hugging and warm and rich, and you know, like all that stuff. Even more so than usual, actually, it's usually an increased intimacy of being strangely if you spend some time in silence, you know, together for a while. But it's sort of an adaptation to the environment, because that's the whole reason for it, is we're confronted with whatever our condition is. And whenever we find ourselves in those sort of positions, the default for our mind is usually not, oh, I don't need to be interpreting anything, I think I'll just be quiet. That's not what it usually does, right? It
starts judging.
Its interpretations get highlighted, and it starts going into sort of hyperdrive for a while. It's natural, you know. I think it's best if you have a sense of sort of compassion for your mind, like, okay, it's just doing kind of what it's meant to do, which is to constantly be interpreting its environment. And when it's not receiving enough information to really interpret it accurately, it'll just fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
And it usually doesn't fill in the gaps with something pleasant, right? It's usually something that's Well, like I said, you get confronted with whatever the quality of your inner conversation is then.
And the feeling of anxiety comes up with me because I know I'm always, when I'm fresh in a room, looking for friends or looking for a safe haven and something from my childhood, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been here for 5 minutes and it all comes up. Is it because of you? Is it because of this place? Is it because of the energetic field? Or I'm making it too special?
Oh, I think it's, I wouldn't really make it particularly special. I mean, there's nothing sort of magical about it, you know. It's probably if you walked into this was full of a bunch of businessmen, but they decided to be quiet for a day. Who knows why? They're not meditating, but they're just not talking. Yeah. You'd probably have the same sort of feelings. It might even be weirder because they'd all be dressed up in business suits, and it would make it even a little stranger. So it's nothing, I think, particular to like a spiritual environment or some special anything that's going on here. It's just we're not used to this, you know. Yeah. We're not. I remember going the first times that I went to like Zen retreats, and it's very odd. Like nobody's talking, and so you're not getting that reinforcement, that thing that's finding out where is my position? How do I fit in? Do people like me? Am I doing the right thing? Am I screwing up? Am I? Yeah. You know, we're just not getting that information, and you know, part of that's painful. Course, right? And
confusing. I just walked into the ladies' bathroom. I was disoriented, confused.
Yeah. Well, that's maybe the best word for it. Actually, is it's disorienting. Yeah. Now, once you kind of get used to it, that little commentator sort of realizes like it's just not necessary, right? It's just that everything's okay. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That everything's actually okay, that you're safe, and it kind of it'll slow down that particular kind of commentary. I might pick up a different commentary, you know. But again, we're kind of the reason for the silence is so the beauty and the horror of it is we're confronted with whatever our mental emotional condition is. You know, the power of a retreat. Beyond the teaching and all of that, there's an underlying power that like no teacher is making happen, nothing mystical, nothing especially unique about it. Is one of the most powerful things about it is just being confronted with our condition in the sense of we're not avoiding ourselves. That's what a retreat is. Like, okay, I'm not watching TV, I'm not turning on the radio, I'm not talking. You know, when I get a little anxious or bored or I feel disconnected, I'm not calling a friend. So all the ways we tend to avoid our discomfort are, many of them just they're not here, right? There isn't a TV, we're not talking, we're not
cell phone.
We're not cell phone, we're not doing all that. And initially that's challenging. Right, because we get so habituated to all those ways of kind of avoiding ourselves. But the power is, you know, like I said, usually in a few days, something starts to sort of settle down and kind of the environment stops feeling so odd and strange, and we really get this mirror. That's the beauty and the horror of it, right? It's like you're looking in a mirror 24 hours a day, right? Because that's all that's there is you and whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling. But that can be a really powerful thing, you know. It can be really powerful. It's the reason why every contemplative spiritual tradition I know, whether it's Buddhism or Christianity or Islam, they all have this contemplative. They all have times of silent retreat time, right? Some of them have monastics that basically live in silence. But there's a commonality, and I think there's a reason, not that we want to or even need or even should, live in silent environments forever like that. That wouldn't, for most people, that's not really gonna fit their style of being, right? But to do it every now and then can be really really, really powerful. So, and on the other hand of it, so from my point of view, like when I'm teaching, what's wonderful about it for me is that everybody is in a state where they're just wherever they are, however they are, there it is. Like they can't really avoid it. Of course, we can avoid it, right? We can go into fantasy, we can go into judgment, we can go into shame, we can go into blame. All ways of kind of avoiding just feeling what we feel. Like I feel disoriented, or I feel uncomfortable, or maybe I feel. Some people come and just feel total relief, like, oh, I don't have to be anybody, right? I don't have to present myself, and they feel this great relief of not having to sort of put on any kind of
anything up,
right? Yeah. Not put on any kind of an act.
Are those people? Are the people here brave people? Are they courage? Do they have a lot of courage?
I think it takes courage to do something like this. I mean, certainly when I was young, I started this like at 20. It took a lot of courage for me to do it. I mean, man, the first retreat I did was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life up to that point.
And how did your parents react when you built that little thing in the back garden?
Oh, I was so fortunate. I was so fortunate. I mean, bless their hearts, it was probably hard for them to understand what their kid was doing, but they were totally supportive. They were really, really, for some reason, I don't know why.
Were they also into meditating?
No, they weren't even. I didn't even grow up in a sort of a religious household. Like we didn't go to church or all that stuff. There was a lot of religious talk. My grandparents were quite religious, and when family would get around, often religion was a talk. And even as even a 7 or 8 year old kid, I would often find myself in the rooms where the adults were talking and just sort of eavesdropping on these conversations. I just loved eavesdropping on these conversations. And they weren't always sort of religious, but there was religious. But it was kind of like curiosity sharing. It wasn't like dogmatic and, hammering each other with belief systems. So I found that fascinating. But
maybe there your fascination with Jesus started when you're listening to...
Yeah, I think so. Well, growing up in Western culture, less so as time goes on, but even when I grew up, I'm 56, we go to a culture that's just saturated with the Jesus story. Whether we're Christian or we believe in it or not, it's affected this culture so much it's hard for us to even imagine, because so much of it is embedded into the culture in a way that's not even obvious. That doesn't even look religious.
Can you name an example?
Well, I think a lot of Western culture, got the vast majority of its morality from the Jesus story, from that Christian view. Of course, when that grew out of Judaism, right? Mm-hmm. So it was also in Judaism. So it was in the story. I think the imagination of that story, sort of the Jesus story is a sort of heroic journey, right? Jesus is sort of a spiritual hero, and it's in the same way that Buddha is a hero. You know what I mean? Jesus goes out in the desert, Buddha goes out in the forest, and they're searching for something, right? And they both find something, bring it back to the community, share it with the community. That's about as archetypal as it can possibly be.
Lord of the Rings, same story.
That's the whole thing, right? That's what I mean when I said it's embedded within the culture. Lord of the Rings is the same story. Yeah. And of course this predates Christianity and Buddhism too. It's like this archetypal patterning in our DNA and our consciousness that's been there for, God knows how long it's been there.
Searching for the gold, searching for the ring, searching.
Right. And so, you look at this like a story, like, you look at the Jesus story, and it's a really odd, weird story if you never read it, if you came from outer space and you see these miracles and
walk on water,
worshiping some guy that got nailed to a cross, and this doesn't make any sense. But like as a kid, I'm like watching things about Jesus on TV, and I'm just transfixed. Wow, even though I'm not in a religious household or anything, I'm not Christian, but something about the story is like grabbing me. And I think it's literally grabbing my genes, my DNA, that part like I said, that almost like the story of the religious hero that's in our consciousness for who knows how many tens of thousands of years, all of a sudden it just gets evoked, and you don't know why it's evoked. Like people go to Lord of the Rings. Why are they so entrenched? Yeah. It's just a violent, bloody mess of a movie, right? And, okay, some people like that, but it caught on with so much fascination. Yeah. It's touching, I think, patterns in our consciousness that are so far deeper than we're even consciously aware of. And all of a sudden we're just staring at that thing for 3 hours. And in one sense it doesn't make any sense, right? But I think it's the same sort of archetypal pattern, and we respond to it whether we're religious or not, or spiritual or not. Like, we get captured by these themes. Yeah. You know?
Do you also have, like, if you listen to music, songs, almost you can hear the search for this in everything. I can't live if living is without you. And then you start thinking, but what you are you talking about? What's that thing that's missing? And
yes,
you see it in movies. You see it you read it in novels. Is that recognition like a sign that you're on the right path, or that you're getting it, or?
Well, I think it's a sign, first of all, that you're a human being, and that these things are just part of our DNA. You know what I mean? Yeah. In the sense that every religious story, and not just religious, lots of stories, but they have depictions of, like, the fall, right? Christianity certainly has it. Buddhism has it too, though, not in the Christian version, but it's like, okay, samsara. And the reason that you feel the way you do is because basically of sort of like some sort of cosmic ignorance. Well, if you or I are suffering from cosmic ignorance, that's just another version of the fall, right? I fall into the state where I feel estranged or apart, or I think almost anybody can currently or has in their life identified just with this very simple intuition, like, something's just not right.
There's something missing.
Maybe it's me, maybe it's you, maybe it's us. Or feeling a sense of alienation, like, I got a lot of friends, but I feel disconnected. Like, that's the fall. That's the fall. The stories of the fall are just mythic representation of what almost every human being feels in their life.
And that's why we get attracted so much to that kind of stories, music, novels.
Exactly. That's why we'll, like, get transfixed by these things, and we don't even really know why we're transfixed, because they're a way of depicting that, like putting it in some creative representation, and also a way of saying, hey, there's a way to respond to that. Like, you just have to sit back and feel alienated, or like there's something wrong, or that there's some way to respond to that.
Have you seen the movie Truman Show? The Truman Show with Jim Carrey?
Yes.
Isn't that also a spiritual movie about this guy thinking, there's a light falling down, there's the same people every day walking on the street, what's going on here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe this isn't quite as real as I think it is. You know what I mean? Yeah. You get, like, just like Truman, like, you get these intuitions, right? Yeah. But then we stuff them away because, oh man, we don't. That's a little too weird or uncomfortable or something. But we do get these intuitions, right? Like, something doesn't add up here.
Talking about filming, I have to adjust the shot for 1 minute.
Sure.
Can I steal 30 seconds of your time?
You can, because I need a drink.
Okay, great.
Timing's good.
Okay, let me put on my headphones.
All right.
So, any other stuff you, as a kid, you love to read, do, see, watch?
Oh, I mean, from the time I was a child, I always had this very paradoxical nature, right? I always had this side that was very contemplative, very quiet, very introverted,
shy.
Very shy. All those qualities are still there. I'm still shy. I'm still introverted. I'm still all those kind of things. And also simultaneously, very, very, very physical. Always been very, very athletic. Lots of endurance, athletic kind of stuff. So
running?
I did ultra-marathon running for a while. Just a whole lifetime of physical activity. Used to race bikes, very competitive when I was young. So I had all this competitive physicality, which, at least when you think about it, seems in great contrast to this sort of very contemplative, sensitive sensibility, but that's just always been part of my makeup, this very grounded, human, physical aspect, and then this very sort of spiritual, contemplative, ethereal part of my being. And it only took me about 4 decades to really kind of come to peace with it, because it used to kind of confuse me a lot, of like, seems like a lot of spiritual people I meet, they don't seem to have like this bloodthirsty desire to beat somebody to the finish line, right? That's kind of weird. Yeah. And the bloodthirsty people that are trying to beat everybody to the finish line don't seem to have this really contemplative, meditative orientation.
Yeah.
I just couldn't put it together,
Could you say everything needs a balance? That then on this end, this needs this too?
Perhaps. I would think I would have to be kind of guessing a little bit too much. I just know that just seems to be the way that I was, hooked up. Of course, the really competitive part sort of diminished over time and everything. But at a certain point, I just sort of, I think we all are sort of invited to do, whether we do it or not. But I just sort of relaxed and became easy with it. It was just like, okay.
That's how it is.
That's how it is. That's how it is.
No rejecting one part or lifting up the other.
Yeah, I love spirituality and to explore the nature of, our being. And I love getting my bike and going as hard as I can up the biggest, longest, steepest mountain pass I can possibly find, right? And riding myself into unconsciousness almost. Okay, apparently both of those are things I like to do.
Yeah.
And so be it.
It's no death wish that you think, I'm going to push the boundaries even further. I had that for a while. I lived like a maniac, driving 200 on the freeway, and
yeah.
It's all just my illusion. Let me just just try it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Mine was the link that I finally made between these two aspects of being. The link that I finally made was they were both explorations of potentiality. One was an inner, what's the potential of consciousness, of being, and just the joy of discovering what that is. What's there on the whether you think of it as the most inner domain or the outer edges of that. And in the physicality part, I would like to explore. It was an exploration for me. It wasn't I did a lot of risky things, but I wasn't a thrill seeker, It looked like I was, because I would bike race and rock climb and, mountaineer and do all these risky things, but it was never about taking risks, or it was never about the thrill. It was about what lies out here near the boundary of potentiality. And I really enjoyed discovering what that was. Of course, physically, I've slowed down with that.
Because you're 45 right now?
I'm 50. I'm 56. and my body's been telling me, okay, well, you don't need to push that edge forever, That's more of a young man's game. But that was a good thing to find out. That was the common thread. Once I got the common thread, and I got that decades ago, but once I got the common thread, it was a lot easier. I was like, oh, okay. I just love the exploration of potentiality.
And maybe also micro and macro. I don't know if it's an English word.
Yeah.
Micro.
And macro, yeah, that's a good point.
If you zoom into the body, you see almost the same things if you're looking at the stars.
You sure do. That's right. Yeah. And if you get tired enough, you get into a very, very, very meditative state. Right?
You don't have to do anything for it.
Right. You don't really have to do anything. You just the mind kind of goes quiet, and there you are, and I didn't know that for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's the link. Ah, okay. Yeah.
I have two big questions.
Yeah.
Let me just throw in one. Is there a big why to all of this?
A big why to all this?
Yeah.
Can you define that question a little bit more for me?
It's been the question that drives me for about 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why being? Why an earth? Why an universe? And then people tell me, well, there's no why. The why is into the question. I got all the answers. I'm curious what you.
Yeah. I think it's a serious question, and like a lot of deep questions, I think the answers are more paradoxical, at least for me. That, from one dimension of being, there's no why, in the sense that, why is like our mind looking for a kind of justification for the way things are the way they are, right?
Yeah.
And from a certain dimension of being, they just are the way they are, But I don't mean just in the sense where our ego mind looks out and it gets a little depressed and, it's just the way it is. I mean, it's just the way it is in the most positive possible sense. Life is an extraordinary happening, right? So in one sense, okay, no why. Or really it's like beyond why. It's not no why, because that's kind of negative.
It needs no why.
It needs no why. That's the best way to put it, right? It needs no other justification than being itself needs no other justification. Now when we're a little bit, not that we can actually be separated from being, but when we're not deeply conscious of being, then there's a little gap inside. And that gap is trying to fill in that gap.
Mm-hmm.
And the why is like an effort to fill in that gap between ourselves and being. Strangely, when the gap between us and being, subjectively, disappears, it's funny how the why just disappears along with it.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay, that's kind of you could say more of like the absolute perspective.
For an example, a child which is playing in the yard doesn't ask themselves, why am I playing? It just plays.
You've ever noticed that about kids? Why is a question that comes only once we've developed self-consciousness.
Yeah.
Kids don't have much self-consciousness,
Yeah.
especially when they're really young, right? They have when we're born, we have none at all. But they develop it, but they don't have enough self-consciousness. And self-consciousness is the thing that starts to make you feel apart.
Could it almost be a sign of depression when you start asking yourself a lot of times the question, why?
It can make you depressed because the mind usually doesn't fill that in with great answers.
Yeah.
Well, and for right, not rightly so, but it's understandable, right? Because you look around life and, it's like, life's a beautiful, amazing, mysterious happening, and it's a bloody mess, right? So as we grow up, and not only a bloody mess out there,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes like your own life has been.
Families.
Yeah, it can be sort of a bloody mess. And that gets people to say like, why?
Yeah.
Right? And like that confrontation with suffering.
That's what I read. What Buddha said, life is suffering.
That's the funny thing about Buddhism. When I first ran into it, I thought, how did this ever catch on?
It's not a
this is your advertisement.
Here you go. Yeah.
Right. Life is suffering.
Yeah.
I think my sort of way of understanding that statement
Mm-hmm.
is that life contains an unavoidable element of suffering. It's not that all life is suffering, right? If it was, nobody would sustain it very long at all, right? But in life is a sort of unavoidable component of suffering. A lot of suffering is avoidable, right? A lot of suffering is what I call optional. It's like it's happening basically in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably 95% of our suffering is happening. Like you said, you walk in here and all of a sudden it feels strange and the judgment starts or the wondering or what's wrong with me, and that's all optional. You know
5 minutes of suffering.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
for free.
right. But I think it was a acute. It was an acute observation, but when Buddha recognized that, but it was actually something. It was very obvious, right? And what I've found is people. I used to wonder sometimes when I would teach certain things, like, oh, but I don't know if people are going to want to hear this. But if it's truthful, if you just tell people the truth, I find they like it. They want somebody to tell them the truth. And I think when Buddha probably was preaching that way back then, I think people kind of went like, you know what? You're right. You're right.
It was a way for him to connect with those people.
Yeah, you can trust somebody that's being honest with you.
Yeah.
If somebody says, life's just all beautiful and it's lovely and it's divine and it's God's gift to you and all, something on us might want to believe us, but something else inside is going, oh man, but somebody's bullshitting me. You know what I mean?
That's maybe why Trump catches on so much in America right now. He speaks to what a lot of people already were thinking.
He's giving voice to people's displeasure, anger, upset, alienation. It's all very destructive and everything. But nonetheless, there's something in our culture that he's giving voice to, right? It's a sorrowful sort of destructive element within our culture, but man, it's something we need to see, right? Yeah. We need to like, as a whole, like own up to it.
Could it almost be like Trump is like the in-your-face guy? Look at this. This is what also is in you, and what can become so big that it becomes President Trump.
Right. I think of President Trump as like the cosmic id.
The clown.
Right? He's the id part of everybody's ego, right?
But we recognize it, and if we reject it, we're rejecting our own.
Sure. Yeah.
Our own Trump. Well, I'm talking too much.
Well, we can't transform what we deny, right? If we just say, oh, it's all you, or it's all you people, or it's all him, or somebody, and we don't sort of recognize that, oh, maybe there's something for me to see in this, whether I sort of agree with the guy or not, but, oh, there's something, maybe it's good not to just push it all out over there onto the other. And, then I think, then there's a mirror there, and maybe we can transform because of that, possibly. I certainly hope so.
So it has a function.
It has a function. Whether it will end up to be negative or positive, who knows?
That we don't know.
Right. Right now it's evoking a heck of a lot of chaos and a heck of a lot of violence, right? But in the end, that was in our culture anyway, right?
Yeah, so it brings it out.
It's evoked it. It's
evoked.
Yeah, it's evoked it. It's brought it out. It's, in one sense, it's made it worse. But if we want to grow up, right, as a culture, if we're ready to grow up, we'll start to own up to that. That, like, okay, that is in our culture. Like, gosh, there's 3 mass shootings in the last week. Yeah. And hardly a week goes by in the United States without a mass shooting. Like, why is that? Why do we have so many? What's going on here? What's part of our culture? So it brings these big questions that who knows if we will really be able to ask them as a whole and grapple with them and honestly encounter them, or we'll just project them out and or just react, and who knows how it will end up. I hope something good comes out of the whole mess, but
there's some teachers, Ajahn, who tell me that the people who do those mass shootings and the people who come to a retreat are looking for the same thing. In essence, people who blow themselves up, people who go to Las Vegas and gamble, we're all looking for that indescribable one.
Well, I think it's all a response to pain, right? It's all, like Buddha said, suffering. Like, somebody doesn't grab a gun and shoot a whole bunch of people unless they're in a lot of pain.
And you feel really disconnected.
Right. Or they just have really defective brain chemistry and they're just mentally ill. And
yes.
some of them are, but more of them aren't. Most of them aren't psychotic, actually. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. They're just people that they've experienced a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and you know, unfortunately, they're acting it out, but it's a response, right? It's a response to something. It's not a constructive response. I think that say a spiritual retreat is a bit more constructive response, right?
Of course, yeah.
But in that sense, and why do people come on retreat? Because they're a lot of times because it's their own response to suffering. And on the positive side, sometimes there's a sort of strange yearning that they don't really understand, but they respond to, you know?
The longing.
Yeah, the longing.
And the longing for?
I think the longing is for, it's a little, I mean, there's a universal side, there's an individual side, but I think the longing is really for a deep, two things. I think the longing for is fundamentally for a connection, a deep sense of connectedness. Right, with oneself, with the world we're in, right? So you don't feel like there's little teeny me in this this immensity of life that seems so threatening and overwhelming. So that disconnection, or just between me and you, or oneself. So I think that's a big part of it. You know, just that's the universal part, right? This feeling of disconnection. I want to be connected. And then the other part is, like we were just mentioning,
the personal part.
Suffering. And everybody has their own unique experience of that suffering, and like, hey, how can I address that suffering in a way that might help free me from that suffering? Yeah. You know?
And you also talked in an interview with Oprah about the universal suffering that is going on, the suffering that, like, for example, Germany has of the Second World War. Do you feel that when you travel to those places? Do you feel like a universal guilt or?
Absolutely, yeah. It is interesting traveling, because each like country that I'll land in, you can just feel it in the energy as soon as I get off the plane. You can just feel it.
What do you feel?
There's some cultures are like, some places you land and it's like pretty light and like, oh, okay, that's really nice. Other cultures are like, whoa, there's still a density here. You know, there's a kind of a heavy kind of cloud energy. Burden. Yeah, right. That's not a commentary on the people that are currently in that culture, because that energy kind of field could be there from decades ago, hundreds of years ago, whatever, you know, and it's not as mysterious as it sounds like when you say the energy field of a country. It sounds very woo-woo, right? Yeah. But even somebody that didn't believe in like any of that woo-woo stuff, if you're at all sensitive, one of the things I love about Europe is, you know, you can walk into often some of the smaller, these like churches that have been around for 500 years, whether you're religious or not. But you walk in that door and you can feel some of them like, whoo, there's a presence. Like, what does that mean, though? A presence? How does a presence just hang in thin air or amongst walls? Like, what the hell is that?
Why doesn't it fly out the window?
Why doesn't it fly out the window? Or what are we talking about anyway? Right? Especially like to the rationalists, right? Presence, like, we can't measure that. We can't put that in. What is that? But then you walk into a place and, you know, you could be blindfolded and not even see the paintings on the wall and stuff. And some places are just so rich with it. Or there was a place that I used to do retreats at in California that I don't, because my retreats got too big, but it was a retreat Tibetan site, and it had a wonderful Tibetan meditation hall, which I loved, all the thangkas and deities, and then the house that I stayed in there was a room, and then there was what's called the Lama's room, where only the Lamas got to stay in that room. And you walk in that room, and it's like an onrushing 50-mile-an-hour wind is like hitting you in the face, and it is so quiet. It's just unimaginable. I've never been in an environment that was like so obvious. But again, like to the rational mind, like, what's that? right? Like we'll say, oh, there's this incredibly quiet presence. Or you walk into a church, or you walk into certain places where there's been a lot of deep worship. It leaves an imprint. So that's a mysterious thing, right? We'll call that a presence, right? But that doesn't just explain it. It's a pretty mysterious thing that, like, your and my state of consciousness can hang in the air in a space after we're in it. That's a little different understanding of what consciousness is, right? And it's like, I think a lot of times most of us have had the experience of, you walk in a room, let's say.
Or a bar.
Or you come home and you open the door.
There's been a fight.
Yeah, there's been a fight, or your spouse or your husband is depressed.
Yeah.
And before you even see them, sometimes you open the door and you can, what?
It's like a smell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. See, that's, you're getting the presence of their consciousness.
Yeah.
Like, oh. So, again, like, consciousness is a pretty odd thing.
Yeah.
It just leaves imprints of itself, and those imprints, like, they affect you as soon as you enter into the environment.
And you don't ever have the sense of keeping it out of the door, or is that impossible?
Keeping what out the door?
Yeah, that atmosphere, that presence that you think, oh, not today. You go to Germany and you get into a city where there's a lot of, I don't know, and you think, oh, no, I'm going to put my mother told me you have to put your arms like this, crossed, and shut yourself.
Yeah.
Keep it out of the door.
Keep it out of your
your system.
Of your space. Well, that's one way of doing it too.
Or is it my responsibility to be there and absorb my piece of the pie, or my piece of the thing that's going on?
Well, that's actually an interesting question, I think, because I think it's also connected to the why question in a way too. Not in some absolute deepest sense, but we're all in this together, right? And we're all affecting each other. And what happens when we really realize how deeply we are affecting each other? Whether we want to or not, we are. I mean, we're just talking about presence, right? That's something somewhat subtle, and the effect usually is subtle. Sometimes it can be quite profound, but we don't just affect people with presence, right? With our communication, with our actions, with our, okay, like, okay, I'm actually responsible for that. I'm affecting everything and everybody around me.
So I better...
What do I want that to be?
Yeah.
Right? What do I want that to be? That's where I think spirituality gets out of being which it can slip into being a narcissistic pursuit, like my happiness, my enlightenment, my well-being. I think there's a reason why all the old traditions that I know of, they've always connected it to the world at large. Because that's the only way you keep it from being a narcissistic pursuit about my own
my
happiness.
enlightenment.
Right, my enlightenment, right?
It's not for you, it's for the world.
It's for absolutely. That's the whole point of it, right? If I think our own realization actually allows us to assume a greater responsibility, not less. We can assume more and more and more and more and more and more. And look at the people that we all admire. They are people that have assumed immense responsibility, right? For the well-being of all of us, because they don't see themselves as separate from the rest of life, right? And they may see the innate bottom line perfection of existence. But it's a tricky thing once you see that. It's really seductive to get attached to it.
Seductive?
Yeah, because you can go, I see that life's just perfect. Even when it's a mess, it's perfect. It's all an expression of love. And there's a dimension, like the deepest dimension of being, like, that's true. That's what you see, and you feel that, and it feels very, very real. And it's seductive just to hold up in there. And if somebody's in pain, and you're just like, it's just perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And you're not actually...
Namaste, and you walk away.
That's right. And you're not really... You can it's funny because what I've seen is every state of realization has its own built-in illusions. And they're very easy to miss. They're very easy to miss.
Also, there are more. I once heard of the Advaita Shuffle, where you think, the ego says it's all an illusion. You just sit back and watch the show.
Right.
But there are more.
Oh my God! There's I just mentioned the one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can sort of see the perfection of everything, and it's not that that's not true and that's not real, but that's not the only thing that's true and real. Existence is unimaginably paradoxical. It's not one thing. So it's absolutely perfect and beautiful and everything, and it's a total disaster. It's a bloody mess.
At the same time.
At the same time, occupying the exact same space, right? And that's why, at least historically, at least as far as I see it, the greatest realizers that have ever walked around this place haven't taken their realization hidden in a cave and just went, well, good for me. I'm in heaven and that's what I'll do.
Yeah.
They've generally completely dedicated themselves to the well-being of the world that they see as perfect. But I think it's because their vision is big enough that it can hold this paradoxical vision, that it's perfect and complete, and it's a bloody mess with a whole lot of potential. And our minds don't like those kind of things and want to know which is it.
Is it this or that?
Right,
yeah.
Both.
Yeah. It reminds me of the Netflix series Stranger Things. I don't know if you've seen it. They have the upside down. You have the beautiful world with all the people cheering, and then suddenly, boom, it goes into the upside down.
How interesting.
Where everybody is like a monster and starts eating each other. And
yeah.
What do you do in your free time? Do you watch Netflix?
Sure.
Yeah, and what do you watch?
I knew you were going to ask me what do I watch. I'm trying to think. I have such a terrible memory. I really do.
Series or movies or concerts? Or?
I'll watch movies, although it's hard to find a movie that I haven't seen that I actually really like nowadays. You know what I mean? I'll watch series, but I mean, I'm being very serious with you. I have probably the worst memory of anybody I know, and I was born that way. I haven't lost any of it. I don't know why.
It happens often with enlightened people.
Yeah, but I was that way before anything. It didn't get worse with any awakening, as it does for a lot of people. But I mean, there's sure I'll watch movies. There's certain TV programs I like. I'm not always just sort of sitting in the lotus position gazing at my navel.
That's what people think, but they all sit in this way all the day. But do you watch the documentaries on Netflix about Osho, Wild Wild Country?
I did see that, yeah.
What do you think?
I thought, what an ungodly mess. Holy smokes.
And is there any... Here I come with my why again, but the woman at the beginning said, the Oprah came to town. And I thought, if you look at this way, it just landed, there was a big psh, and then it went away again.
Yep.
I thought if you look at it that way, it wasn't that terrible.
Yeah, you can look at it that way, and that's a totally legitimate way to look at it, right? And a whole lot of people got hurt.
Yeah.
And
a lot of mess going on.
And a lot of mess going on, and here was, I think, someone in Osho who had, could have tremendous amount of clarity, brought immense numbers of people into spirituality. I don't think he was just intentionally a deluded charlatan from the very beginning. No, I think he's an example of, a big example, because his life was played out on a big stage. It's something that I think it's probably good for spiritual people to know, which is man, even spiritual awakening, even enlightenment experience, it doesn't guarantee infallibility. Far from it. You can be really clear in one dimension of being and super undeveloped in another dimension. And just your spiritual insight isn't necessarily going to bring all the dimensions of being along with you. We would like to think it would, right? That's what we want the fantasy of enlightenment to be like. But we just keep having these examples over and over and over and over and over. Like, that's not necessarily the way it is.
What would happen if you would start smoking outside here, the building?
Yeah,
Put on a cigarette.
I don't know.
Wouldn't people
They probably would wonder, like, I didn't know he smoked.
And he went to the McDrive, and he ate a hamburger.
Right. Yeah. It's, for me, I do try to emphasize, like, even enlightenment itself, like, that's part of the game. Like, that doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to know how to be in good, intimate relationships. That doesn't mean you're not going to be able to delude yourself. That doesn't mean that you're not going to be seduced by power or desire necessarily. It doesn't guarantee that. And the more, like, everybody just admits that, then you can get on with the business of, okay, go out. If the spiritual awakening, and it's very, very transformative. It's like foundational freedom stuff. But that's one of the, like, high-level illusions. Like, because you start to feel like everything's totally okay eternally. Even to screw everything up, it's all okay. It's all forgiven.
Perfection.
And that's true. But if you attach to that truth starts to delude you. Because then you're in unconscious denial of other parts or dimensions of your humanity which might be very underdeveloped. And to call it perfection isn't going to do it. So that's the trickiness of the funny thing about bumping into these sort of what we often call like realizations of reality, or however we want to look at it, is it's like a diamond. That's the image I like to use is the diamond that has many facets, right? And one of them is everything's totally perfect. Everything. Another one is, like nothing exists. It's like the world is an illusion. Like, there's lots of these facets. They're like perspectives of the deepest dimensions of consciousness. But each one feels 100% complete. Each one. Right? And because it's a facet of a totality, so you're kind of experiencing a totality through that facet. But that's the key. You're experiencing the totality through a given facet of perception. And the trick is, the danger is you will conclude because everything in you will feel that it's complete. Because you're touching upon completeness. But there may be 50 other facets. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. Each facet has a high-level delusion in it. One of the delusions is because it feels totally complete and all-encompassing, it is complete and all-encompassing. No, it just feels complete and all-encampassing.
It's like the blind people eating the elephant.
Exactly. Right, they touch from different places and they each think they know.
That's the elephant, the tail, or the...
Yeah, and so you hear this, like if you go over on even the world's different enlightenment teachings, they're far from
complete,
saying the same, right? One has this facet or two or three facets. Another one has this, and people get all confused and like which one's the right one, and they usually decide based on their own biases, which one they'll go for. When, as I see it, like nobody's going to hold the whole diamond. That's just not going to. I've never read it. I've never heard of it. I've never seen it. But the more of those facets we can touch upon, of course, the bigger our view is. And then quite apart from the facets of sort of the diamond of reality is don't let those facets delude you into thinking that you've got your entire human act together, or that if you don't, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter?
Yeah, don't delude yourself in thinking it doesn't matter, because it does matter, right? Because it does matter because it's going to affect the next person you meet. And of course, if your life starts to play out on a bigger scale, it affects more and more and more and more and more and more people. So that's the tricky thing, because enlightenment fills you with a kind of confidence, but that confidence can slip over into overconfidence, into a kind of delusion.
And that's what happened with Osho.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't there, so I can't make, but it sure kind of looks that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's not saying it was all bad or all wrong or what. It's to say, like, yeah, he was a human being, and maybe he had some parts that were underdeveloped, and then other people get, we attract around our incompleteness, and when you're playing life out on a bigger scale, like he was, everything gets amplified.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Those same things happen in a really small, unamplified version in people's lives all the time.
In relationships.
Sure.
Families.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's why I say this whole thing comes with, I try to, every once in a while, I intentionally try to scare people a little bit. And I'll say, well, this enlightenment thing comes with immense responsibility. It's not just a freebie gift. You better realize how you become more and 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 more responsible, and the consequences for not taking that on become greater and greater, not less and less.
Yeah, doesn't sound like a picnic.
It's not. No, yeah, that's why you can have these these immense falls from grace, because the consequences go up for you as well as for others. And so I think to keep that in mind, I keep that in mind all the time.
Never makes you nervous that you think, this week a retreat, and I'm just discovering this part of the diamond, and aren't you then just bringing it into the retreat? Or?
Yeah, I'll just bring it in.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, no, I don't get nervous about it at all, because like I'm doing with you, I don't go up and just I don't like intentionally pretend like I've got every facet of the diamond. I'm totally perfect. I'm a living, perfect example. Like then, you damn well bet I'd be nervous.
So it's about honesty.
Yeah, one of the best protectors for any of us, forget spirituality or enlightenment or all the rest. One of the best ways we can protect ourselves and each other, just be honest. Just be a real human being. It's like boots on the ground, simple.
And is that why we just met, let's say, 1 hour ago? It feels like I've known you for a long time.
I feel like that too. I don't know why that is.
Is that vulnerability or that honesty that I started the interview with, being honest about me getting in here?
That's right.
And feeling all those feelings?
That's right.
And you thought, okay, we're going to be honest. I'm going to be honest
too. You open the door. I open the door. We both walk through it. I think it's a very human thing, right? When we are like just who we are, then there's somehow that like we almost immediately start to know like, I can trust this person. Like they're real. They're not pretending, and sure, then there's like connection, right?
It still gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
So how come? We're not in love with each other. Yeah, maybe we are in love with each other, but not on a
right
sexual way. But what is that?
That's human connection. Like the more real we are together, whoever it is, but the real, we just feel connected. Because of course we are connected, but that's a beautiful thing. Like we all want to feel that. That's why, you get the little prickly thing on you, like, ooh, it's like this isn't conceptual, right? No. It's like your body responds like, I feel strangely connected. I don't know why I feel connected, but I feel it, and it's it's in the quality of your skin dances.
But tomorrow my mind could come up and say, I have to meet this Adyashanti again. I want to get those goosebumps again.
that could happen.
Yeah, but it's not about you and me.
No.
I could get this with the woman.
Absolutely.
In the parking lot.
Yeah, a stranger. Absolutely. That's right. And that's a really, really, really important thing, right? Because if you don't realize, then you become like what I call a spiritual junkie. You're just going to the teacher to get a hit, right? Feed me. I want to have that feeling. I want to have that experience. Like, okay, some of that experience is nice, maybe even useful because you can kind of open up and you relax and stuff. But nobody should think like that's in the end what it's all about, or that I need to go to a spiritual teacher to have that. No. I once heard the comparison. Don't go worshipping the mailman who brings you the love letter. That's absolutely beautiful.
It's about the letter, not
That's
about
right.
the mail. Oh, you brought me the love letter.
That's
Oh.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, that's, you know, I think I got that from my teacher. Like, she just didn't let anybody do the worship thing. It was like, no way. That's not what we're doing here. And I just like absorbed that from her. She just, you can just feel, back to presence, you can feel in somebody's presence when they're putting that thing out that just wants to hook you and draw you in and keep you with them, right? And she had none of that. Like, she was there for you. And so I absorbed that for like 14 years, just watching how she moved and how she operated, and I have incredible, she's like 100 years old now, I have incredible love and devotion and respect for her, but I have zero worship.
You don't wear her underneath your shirt in a mala or
Nope.
no tattoo with her name or no.
No.
It's not necessary.
Absolutely.
You could do it, but it's not necessary.
I could do it, but it's right because like I said, I don't think it's just not about worship. Is when we take the best of us, put it in somebody else's lap, and say, "You hold it now for me, and I'm going to worship it in you." Right? And then eventually we'll get pissed off at the person. But really, we're the one that put it there.
Yeah.
Now, that person may like the fact we put it there, right? Who knows? They may really like that. But nonetheless, when we're putting something into somebody and saying, okay, you be the enlightened person, and I'll worship you as above me and better than me and all of that. And then someday, I'm going to resent that.
Yeah, because you didn't
get upset with that.
You didn't hold it well.
Right.
I'm guessing we have to wrap up. It was a very nice conversation. Thank you for this. I have one or two questions from our viewers.
Oh, good.
Is there a way to tell this to family and friends? Joyce wants to know.
About
a way to express this to family and friends. Once you get a taste of this, you want to scream it out of the window and you gather all the family and come sit down. You have to see this interview with Adyashanti.
Yeah.
What is there a way? Is there a right way, a wrong way, or?
Yeah. Well, it's all very individual. I'll answer this with a little story.
Okay.
Now, whether we make a discovery of a teaching or a teacher, or we have our own experience of some revelatory experience, like there's often this phase, like where we feel very excited, and it's very positive and it's very beautiful, and we want to share it with people, and it's kind of like a proselytizing energy. It's useful to know, like, that's a phase. It's not going to last forever.
Okay.
In fact, it shouldn't last forever. But it's okay that it's there. Like, don't try to squash it down. So, I'll give you an example. When my grandmother, who's no longer with us, but when I was, doing Buddhist retreats and the whole thing, and actually it was after that. I was teaching, actually, the early years that I was teaching. And she's very, like, her whole life Christian woman, right? Really devout and everything. And she started to ask me about what I did, right? And I just thought, okay, what am I going to do here? I just thought, I'm going to put this in her language. And so I just used Christian terminology, And instead of saying consciousness, I would say spirit. You know what I mean? Or God, or whatever. And I just tried to put it, without like watering it down and compromise it, but I tried to put it as best I could into her language, because after all, I'm trying to communicate to her, right? Why wouldn't I put it into a language that she could hear it? And I actually found it just so enjoyable to translate it into a different language. And she was, I was fortunate. She was like, she found it really interesting, right? Now, she might not have, even if I translated it, but I think sometimes, especially if we have a lot of energy, we can sort of forget, like, let me really pay attention to the person across from me. And what will allow them to hear what I'm saying? Is there a language? If there's not, then
maybe a hug.
Maybe just a hug. It's in fact, it's always better to be it than to say it.
Ah.
Like you said, a hug is hug, or as my teacher said, one action is better than 10,000 words. So, yeah, just put it into an action. We might want to proselytize and tell somebody something or whatever.
All the Advaita dogma, there is no free will, come sit down, it's all Maya.
Right. And it can just be so off-putting. And in the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What really matters is how we encounter each other, the quality in which we're engaging. That speaks volumes, right? It's like that the husband, my grandfather, my grandmother, he was also really religious. All of his friends called him the deacon because he was always the deacon at the church, right? And I loved him, and he loved me, and we did a lot of things together when I was a little kid. He never talked about religion once to me. And yet, to this day, I often say he's the first true Christian I ever met in my life.
He demonstrated it.
He was it.
He was it. Embodied.
He just embodied it. And so he didn't have to tell me about it. He just embodied it. And lastly, one of the things I like that I got from, I don't know where it came from some Zen teacher, don't know who, but I remember, like, when do you tell somebody about that, about this, or it was also like for a teacher, like, when do you tell somebody about the Dharma? It was like after they asked 3 times.
Okay.
Now, I wouldn't hold that as like a firm rule, but it's trying to communicate something, right? Yeah. It's trying to communicate like there needs to be receptivity, and don't just bulldoze somebody with your enthusiasm, Stay connected, right?
Attention.
Right, and if they can hear it, or you can put it in a language that they can hear it, great. And if you don't think they can, just be it. Like you said, maybe you just give them a hug. And they go, that's funny, he didn't used to hug me. Right? Wonder what's happened to him. Right? But
it reminds me of the phrase, you can bring a horse to the sewer, but you can't force him to drink. Don't know which, if you know what I mean.
You can bring a horse to water, but you can't force him to drink.
I don't know if sewer is the good. One last question from our viewers. Oh no, there's 2. Is there a new book coming out soon?
Is there a new book coming out soon?
Are you writing something?
Yes. There is. I'm trying to think, because it's based on not soon, probably next year.
Okay.
Probably next year.
And what do you like about Holland?
Oh, 2 things, because I do love Holland. I love Holland. First time I came here was 8 or 9 years ago, something like that. Was in Amsterdam, and I like the energy in Holland. That's the first thing. We were talking about sort of energies. There's sort of a lightness of being in Holland.
Joyfulness.
Yeah, and I can feel it in the people too. Doesn't mean everybody's joyful, but but there's a lightness in the atmosphere.
Playfulness, maybe.
Yeah. And I could feel that just stepping off the plane. Like, oh, that's that feels kind of nice.
It's gonna be fun.
So I like that, and then that's reflected to varying degrees in the people. I like the people. Like I love teaching here. I love teaching in Europe in general. Because the first time I came to Europe, 15, 20 years ago, whatever it was, I did some teaching, and it was really good to come here, because I saw when I went back home to America, I immediately knew, like, oh, America, we're an adolescent culture. And there's really good things to be an adolescent. There's a sense of possibility and enthusiasm and creativity and all of that. And there's also sort of an adolescence. Europe, it's been here a long time. You've been through a couple of world wars and a whole lot more before that. And it's not an adolescent culture. It's been here a while. And you can feel that in the land, and I can feel that in the people. and it's hard to put my finger on and say, this is what it feels like. But when I talk to people up in that room, whenever I'm teaching, there tends to be a more immediately honest engagement. That's what I notice. And not only as a teacher, but just as a human being, I really like that.
Yeah.
Right? I like that. Like, especially, and I think even more so in Holland. Like, people are pretty forthright here about just telling you what they think and where they are. And there's not as much pretense, and that's a neat thing. And I think that comes out of cultures that have been around, and they've been through a lot, both good and difficult. You know.
And does that give us an advantage for this openness?
It sure could. I think it sure could. Anytime honesty and sincerity is the biggest virtue in all this almost that you can have. And so to have that be a little more transparently on the surface, you know, for the people, I think, it's because otherwise we got to work ourselves up to that sort of that place, that honesty or that sincerity, or, you know, whatever that is, you know. So I think it's a great thing. It's one of my favorite things about being here. So it's a strange, like, paradox, right? Culture has been been through a lot, right? But also, at least certainly in here, like, there's still, like, we retain the kind of lightness in the energy and the people. There's a lightness. Of course, people here are like everywhere else in the sense that, you know, everybody goes through their difficulties, and everybody's, you know, grinding on whatever they're trying to get through. And so, you know, nobody gets a free pass on that. But but it's interesting. Like, each culture is, if you look at it as a whole, individuals, there's always variations, but as a whole, it's so interesting. Each culture, you see how it kind of produces just a little bit different quality of person, and that's what I love about coming and teaching here, is because people come from all over Europe, and so there's all these different cultures, which just makes it like a rich sign of environment. That's why I always tell people, like, it's hard on me physically to come fly over here and fly back and all that kind of stuff, but I always just love coming here.
Yeah. Once you're here, it all blossoms.
Yeah.
Thanks again for this very nice, relaxing conversation.
Thank you.
And
it's nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
Really
Thanks.
fun. Yeah.